2002. Kind of like a level-based hack and slash, somewhat RPG, but not really. ImJecht, when he finally figures out how to fix his audio, will even on some of the story. But for now, I'm just gonna get started. So, 3, 2, 1, and go. So we play as Raiko, who is, well, he's kind of dead. He was brought back by a sorceress to defeat a bunch of not so friendly guys who are up to no good. Jecht, can you swap back to your other setup? It's just like not working at all.
You can't hear me.
I'll raise you a little bit. Okay, should be good.
I'm good now?
Yep, we're good. Okay.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Alright, so as he said, this is Otogi. A little more background. Essentially, you are playing as Raiko. He was born into a clan of executioners. He was ordered to kill his father and decided not to. Instead, he stole the executioner's ceremonial sword and took off. By doing that, he opened up a rift that opens some kind of portal to another dimension, and that's why you have these other monsters from other dimensions coming in.
I'm glad you remember the story.
Yeah, that's essentially it. So this is level 1. All he's doing, he's picking up the Mercy Orb from the Mercy Orb symbol. And then you just kill the Talon Raven Yasha. It's pretty straightforward.
For 1,000 years have they sought to infest this world.
Not much to mess up here, honestly. You don't really get into the thick of the run until the mid and later. Because for the most part, this game does not want you to speedrun it, and you'll see why eventually. Hopefully not.
Yeah, so I do have a bunch of safety saves ready, just in case. This
awesome.
Game is... it's brutal. It really is. The world record... We have a...
Go to the mesh.
We have load removed timings for the leaderboards, but the world record is just under an hour, and neither me nor ImJecht can get anywhere near it. Some of the later levels.
For the most part, yeah, that's very true. Okay, so right now we're just jumping right into the levels. Here's level 2. The game is basically just a hack and slash where you run straight through all 29 levels. Level 2 is a pretty straightforward one as well. You're just going to kill the 2 big staff Raven Yasha here. They're in certain locations. They're fairly easy to get to. This game's very open. There's a lot of space above and around you, which is amazing that they were able to do that without creating some sort of out of bounds. But they did it. They really kept it in really well. Alright, so we're running over to the second giant Raven here.
So a very important thing to note is a drop from the first one is a spell called Dragon. That's going to be incredibly useful later in the run. Magic, along with I think it's a 3-hit or a 4-hit combo?
Yeah, 3-hit combo, yeah.
Yeah, is incredibly strong. Just a couple of levels, we'll see that.
Yeah, so basically what happens with the magic, you can either hold in magic to charge it, and then fire it away. The longer you hold it, the more powerful it becomes. Or you can attack 3 times, and then fire magic, and then it's essentially equal to the maxed out charged magic spell. So it becomes really useful. You kind of just go 1, 2, 3, magic. And it saves a lot of time. It saves you being very vulnerable while charging because you can get knocked out of it.
The world of men will return to an era of harmony.
But this is a From Software game. I think you already touched base on the fact that it was the year it came out, and
yeah, 2002.
In Japan it was 2002. I believe 2003 in America. About 9 months later, or so. From Software and the same people that gave you the Dark Souls games, and then the Kingsfield games before that. You know them by now. So level 3 is pretty cool. Kinda. I guess you're destroying mirrors. They're copper mirrors. They're bringing in some more monsters. They hold a lot of magic as well, and you're just running through and slashing them. It's again very straightforward. Nothing too complicated. Casually, I imagine these levels are a little bit longer, but since we know exactly where we're going, we can just run and gun. This is also not necessarily where the run gets a little more challenging. We've yet to get to that point yet.
Yeah, so with regards to the run getting more challenging, this game is kind of one of I guess they intended you to grind in some levels and, you know, get higher damage, higher health. But when you're speedrunning, you don't really have the time to go and grind. So the further we get into the game, the faster and faster we'll die, and pretty much the less mistakes we can make.
Yeah, so as the game progresses, you'll see the curve and challenge really amp up, because the game does not want you to zoom through it. It wants you to revisit levels, get certain time limits to unlock other spells and weapons. It really wants you to explore, and we just cannot do that whatsoever. And this is None Shall Pass.
None shall pass.
None shall pass.
This is pretty heavy in the memes. This is level 4. He's going to get the Mercy Orb symbol here. This Mercy Orbs increase your maximum life points by 1. If you look in the bottom right, that gauge there, the orbs that circle the progressively decreasing thingy there, those green orbs are your life. Yes. And this is High Priest Jose, who is screaming None Shall Pass, which, what else would he say?
None shall pass.
The source of all of the Otogi memes, pretty much.
Yeah, this game isn't too heavy in the memes, but where it does have them, they're pretty heavy, and they're very memorable, and this is definitely one of those.
None shall pass.
Also, something I haven't mentioned, the jumping downward or jumping heavy attack is extremely, oh god, extremely
Spooky.
So this attack here is extremely overpowered in this game. It is basically the only move you need for the entire run.
None shall pass.
For a lot of reasons. The biggest one being that it stuns enemies. It'll stun even bosses, so you can do it in succession one after another. It's quick, and it recovers very quick as well. Also worth noting, there are a lot of weapons in this game. Even when we get at the very end, that can one-shot any enemy, as well as get yourself one-shot, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But this weapon remains one of the strongest. And the great part about it is it's a semi-broken weapon, and you can repair it for extreme damage. Very high damage.
It's really convenient in a way as well, because the money in this run is actually, I wouldn't say it's super tight, but you don't really have many opportunities to repair swords. And by not having to buy a sword, it frees up a lot of, you know, room to say, hey, this level will be one where we don't really want to take the risk. We want to get that extra damage.
Right, yes, because there's certain levels where the faster you get through, the better, because it can just go downhill very fast. This level, being level 5, basically you're just, I mean, it's not basically, that's what you're doing, you're just destroying the gold bases. You also want to pick up a Mercy Orb here for a Life Orb as well. It's in a secret wall. And overall, we want to get a staff here that we have to get by completing the level in under 3 minutes. This is, I don't know why I can't think of his name. The Crimson
King.
The Crimson
It
King.
is.
Yes, that is who it is. We will be revisiting him. He's very interesting, actually. He's probably the most known character in this whole game, I would say. Even ahead of the main character.
Yeah.
The majority of the things I see from this game are the Crimson King, and as I've talked with Ameiii before, there is some probably previous lore of him, because I did note that he looks very similar to the final boss of Neo 2 as well. Very, very similar. He's very cool looking. I mean, that's why people like him. He's very anime. So by getting through this level in under 3 minutes, we do get a staff that is very useful for magic. And we also run into our first situation where, when we complete this level, we're going to be doing some equips and a buy. Nothing too serious, but it's essential. Let's see why. We also implemented some new magic using strats for this run, as opposed to the world record run that was done well before we got into the run.
Yep, that was all the way back in 2013. There's a runner by the name of Dolphin. Somehow he is a god gamer. He really is. He made it look easy. So me and ImJecht came along and thought, hey, this game looks fun. And we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into.
No, we really didn't. I mean, because he even explains in his run that this game isn't meant to be ran, like it doesn't want you to, and it really, that sums it up more so than any game I've ever ran. It just does whatever it can to take you out. Especially when we're running through the game very underleveled, extremely underleveled.
And in essence will be restored.
I wonder if this counts towards the 3 minutes. Hopefully not.
I hope not. Because I really do need that sword, that staff.
Alright, so that's basically the mission here, is avoid the Crimson King while also destroying the bases, as well as getting the Mercy Orb as fast as possible.
I don't think it's a Mercy Orb, I think it's Mystic Beats.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've been saying Mercy Orb the whole time. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right.
The notes say Mercy Orb. We should probably change that later.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
And look at him, he looks amazing. He looks so cool. He's like the most unique looking monster in the whole game. He's so cool. He makes a great antagonist.
I guess this is where we're gonna learn if we can watch cutscenes or not in some levels.
Alright, yeah, so like I said, a lot of these levels have time caps for unlocking certain items. We're gonna find out real quick. Anticipation.
No, they don't. We're good.
Wow, yeah, we destroyed that. Minute and a half. Not even close. Alright, so now we're going to be buying Butterfly, I believe?
Yeah, buying Butterfly and then equipping it along with the beads.
Yes, which... great combination. Great
First
combination.
use some magic in the run, and first of many as well.
Yes, so these beads increase your attack damage, which is always great. So this is level 6. This is basically get to the boss as fast as possible and kill it. This is the Soul Caller boss. This boss it is, and this boss in particular is very annoying to get to, because when I believe the moon goes away, I think, is when the fire shows up everywhere. There's little fire orbs that they mess you up, and we're already running with such low HP. So by the time you get to her, expect to be well close to death, probably, unless you get pretty lucky.
It's also a timing thing. You want to get there before she's vulnerable to attacks again. But if you get unlucky with all the little fire orbs, you might not even make it in time.
Do not cross the bridges.
Right, so the gimmick behind this boss is that when the moon comes out, you see it's shrouded in the clouds there. When the moon comes out, she becomes invincible. She gets covered by I'm not sure what it is, some kind of magic, but she becomes invulnerable to damage. So the idea is that you wait for the moon to go away again. And during this time, there's an infinitely amount, which is a big theme in this game, actually. There's an infinite amount of enemies respawning around here at all times. And that's actually what I do, is I tend to use the butterfly on the enemies around
Where are
there.
you?
while I wait for her
Are you
to
alive?
become vulnerable
Or
again.
Are you dead? But more importantly, how does your soul taste?
So you see the fire that's around you. That is essentially what becomes so annoying about this level. But it does disappear.
And I've knocked her all the way across the map,
Oh,
so
wow.
that's not a very good start. I should probably be playing this a little safer. So I guess this is also a time to touch on another mechanic that isn't too clear yet. In the bottom right, we have our health in green orbs. We also have a magic bar. To stay alive, you actually have to keep your magic bar above... Well, you have to keep at least some magic. It's probably story-related reasons, but
Have no flavor.
the longer
Right.
the level goes on, the more it's gonna drain.
So what's happening here is our magic meter is also tied to how long we can stay within this level. When that magic meter is gone, it starts to deplete our life, and then when our life's gone, obviously we're dead. So what's happening is we're in this darker realm, which is slowly draining our magic, is what's
I was only
happening.
having a little fun.
So you basically want to get through the level before that magic goes down. It's not very easy, but it's also not too hard. It becomes harder later on one particular area, but for the most part, you should be able to mitigate it pretty well without being too concerned, unless something goes very, very bad. Alright, so Soul Caller is down. So this level 7 coming up is one of the first, one of two, I believe, auto-scrollers.
Yes,
Cemetery.
it's the longer of the two.
Yeah, so this is the longer of the two auto-scrollers in this game, which, who likes auto-scrollers anyways? These are the Caisson jellies. I don't necessarily remember the enemies that are flying around, but you're basically just going to see some jellies. Kind of look like little flans from Final Fantasy, and then at the very end there's a great jelly, a great Caisson jelly. Yeah, just like the mother. And we're going to be using the technique we spoke about earlier with the 3 light attacks. Keep in mind it has to be a light attack. 3 light attacks followed by casting magic bullet, which will cast our butterfly spell at full charge, which will take the boss down fairly quickly.
Yeah, it really is one of those things that once you understand how it works, you save so much time. The game becomes so much easier. This level in particular it's really hard casually.
It's amazing that they even added this mechanic, honestly. Because it makes charging up for the magic, for fully charged magic, really just obsolete and unnecessary. Now, maybe casually you're using a heavier weapon. I'm not really sure. I haven't really touched base with the other weapons in this game, but there could be a chance that there's just a heavier weapon where maybe joining the charge is better. But as far as the speedrun goes, I mean, we mostly just use the beginning sword because it's, you know, combined with the beads that increase your attack, it's really not that bad, and it's fast, so the damage that you get from it, the DPS really is on par with just about any other weapon.
Yeah, there are some other weapons. There's one that you can get that you would think would be amazing. It reduces the defense of the enemies, but you know, I went ahead and tested it, and it's actually worse than the starting weapon. So there's maybe some that will be useful, but for the most part, there's not much reason to switch away, unless you go for magic, which we will be doing later.
Yeah, the convenience of the best weapon to use being the beginning weapon is very nice, especially considering how many weapons are tied behind time limits. So we pretty much just cruise with this, and it's because we for the most part rely on magic, where maybe the sword isn't so great, and it really balances it out well. But getting those magics a little bit later on does become a hassle, and you'll see. Really, well, hopefully not, but there's a good chance you'll probably see why the game kind of wants you to take a step back and revisit levels and grind.
There's also another combo that we haven't touched on. So, similar to free light attacks and then a magic cast, you can also do free light attacks and then a heavy attack. And in the same way, it just does a lot more damage.
No, I didn't even know that. I've never tried that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's about the same as 2 full light attack combos.
Also, if you need to dispatch some of these jellies really quick at the last moment, you can strong attack them off the ship. I do believe they jump back on at some point.
If you don't knock them in the water, they will.
Right, so, and there's a lot of non-water around to knock them into, unfortunately, but for the most part, it's really not that difficult to dispatch of them, as long as you're kind of keeping track of what's going on where. Because the idea is you want to bounce from front to back of the ship to keep track, because if the ship gets too populated, it actually sinks and then the level's done.
Yeah.
And that becomes harder to mitigate when the large boss comes, because the large boss is equivalent to like, I don't know, like 7 of these jellies, weight-wise. And it's just made more annoying by these, I'm not sure their names, they're just like flying kappas, basically. The creature kappa, not the if that wasn't made clear.
Yeah, they're not too dangerous, they're just a bit of a nuisance.
They can be annoying because they can halt your attacks that you're dealing to the jellies. Because the idea is that you really do want to manage the population here. Because once the big jelly comes, it's going to be really hard to keep track of the smaller jellies around. Because as I said, you can die by drowning the ship with too much weight on it. Thankfully, the flying enemies don't add to the weight of the ship.
Ooh, silenced. Hopefully that goes away.
Oh, that's a problem.
That's,
So silence is, in this level, I could see it being a problem, especially this late. Maybe you can get the attack enhancement, the attack buff, and then that might make up for it.
Oh, it wore off. We're okay.
Okay. So when he does the air dash here, this actually depletes that magic meter we were speaking of earlier. And again, even with that being the case, it's not really that difficult to kind of manage that meter. There's a level or two where it becomes a problem where a lot can go wrong, and then the meter becomes a factor, because as I said, also worth mentioning that when it does deplete, he can't air dash anymore. And air dashing is very important in this run.
You also can't stand on water, you'll fall straight through it.
That's very true. Oh, the ship looks like it's getting a little heavy back there. Yeah, so this can happen.
It's gonna spawn.
Yeah, this can happen real easily. Now, we've got about 7 jellies, and we got the ball. So basically, I think the mission should be kill this thing as fast as possible. You'll see now he's doing light, magic. And it's doing very well. And it's even hitting the jellies behind him.
There we go.
Perfect. It's really, with that 3-hit combo into the spell, it really is that simple.
Yeah.
So that's level 7 of the 29 levels.
I definitely remember as a child when I first played this game. I did not have good times with that level. You know, going for 5 minutes to get to the boss, only for the ship to sink on you straight away. That was rough.
Yeah, I remember as a child, I just remember that bell sound that this game makes. That's what made me remember this game. It was literally just the bell sound, and I was Googling, like, Xbox bell sound Japanese game for like 2 years before I found this game. Trying to figure out what it was. Level 8, very straightforward, but you know, it's simple as far as what the mission is, but it can be a little bit complicated. But this one, for the most part, is pretty straightforward. You're just breaking the pillars to drop the tower. Also, one thing mentioning about this game, the environments are extremely destructible, which is amazing. So you can just fly through the roof and you can just destroy these crystals. A lot of the levels, the walls are even destructible. It's very fun. Probably why I enjoyed it as a kid.
Very unique for a game of that era.
Yeah, they did a really good job from software. Always bringing in new elements. even before they were well known at all. At this point, I think all they really had behind their belt was fairly known was Armored Core, and I would guess that's probably it. I mean, Gene's Field wasn't that insanely popular, and more so in Japan, but Armored Core definitely was a huge hit. But they did a great job at designing exactly what you can do in this game. So this upward attack that you do while flying is good for this, as well as the downward thrust that we were speaking about, the jumping heavy attack. It's very, very broken in this game. It just stuns anything. It stuns anything at all, which allows you to just completely barrage enemies as well as bosses. So we use that in conjunction with spells essentially. And this is just dropping the water tower.
Just one more.
That should be the level.
Yeah, so with the life we have, it makes it fairly simple to go through. I think casually you might not have too many issues here either. It's a pretty straightforward level, unless you want to explore some, then it might get a little more sketchy. But other than that, this isn't a level we're ever concerned about in the run itself.
There are a lot of weapons hidden around in the levels. There's definitely one in there. I remember that being one wasn't a particularly useful one. Is it the next level, or it's not the next one? It's one in a couple of levels. We'll actually be picking up a hidden weapon just to give ourselves a little extra money.
Yeah, so we got that comes here in about 2 levels. This level 9 is what I would definitely consider. It's kind of a gimmick. I mean, casually, I hated this boss because I had no idea what I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I had no idea if what I was doing was even like remotely close. This is the Kudara insect. He looks great. He looks like a flying centipede, kind of creepy, but essentially his only spot that can be damaged is the spike on his chin, I believe it is. And he's just going to float around, and your mission is hit him until he becomes very angry, and then when he becomes angry, unfortunately the level doesn't get easier. He flails around, he swoops around, he's just trying to hit you. And you just have to survive it. I'm not sure of the amount of time you have to survive it. It's more than I would say a minute. It can be very stressful casually to get through this, damage him enough to make him angry, and then realize, oh, I gotta stay alive. So that in itself is a problem. Now you add in the fact that if you stand still in this level, you're gonna get hit by electricity. By light, thunder, this lighting that's surrounding him, as well as the area in this vortex. If you stand still for more than a few seconds, it's going to hit you and take like 60% of your life.
Yeah, it's definitely the first level, but the game really ramps up its difficulty.
Yeah, so when this happens, you also want to watch that. You want to watch out for his tail. That's something that the collision in this game is actually pretty good for the most part on this boss. But you just don't want to touch anything on him whatsoever. So the basic idea is to attack him with that downward heavy attack, and
that's the lightning we were speaking of.
Yes. So for those, it's usually best to get to a higher ground and jump across. That's fine. Yeah, playing it safe isn't even a bad idea. A little bit. Ooh, okay. So 2 is not fun, but it's better than the fraction of 1 we had. Again, it's important to keep track of those little green orbs in the bottom right, as well as the magic. Magic doesn't become a factor yet, but the green orbs for this boss, with how underleveled we are, it definitely becomes a problem, because he can essentially one-shot you if he hits you correctly.
Should be one more hit. Pressure on him.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have the raise attack, which I don't necessarily remember. I think it might double your attack output.
Yeah, it's double.
Very useful. There's 2 of them in this level. One's on the ground, the other one's sort of hidden. Alright, now he's just not happy because there's someone literally hitting him with a sword. Who would be? And now the name of the game is to avoid the lightning as well as him. Oof. Oh god.
Yeah, he definitely got a little bit close, trying to avoid him sometimes. But we are mostly safe here. You haven't noticed already the amount of movement you can do on this. Oh, I guess not.
Okay, so here's the here's the thing. I never do that move when I'm waiting for him because I'm afraid of that happening.
Yeah. That rarely happens to me,
but essentially, that's what you want to do. You want to get as high as you can and just kind of float around because you need to always be moving to avoid the lightning, as well as being aware of where he is. It's a very stressful level, and casually, this level, it just destroyed me. I did not have fun.
There's also no explanation of what you do.
No, so the only thing that really kind of points towards, hey, you know, like, here's a little hint, a little something, is that you can lock onto him, but you see, you're locking onto, like, in front of his eyes. You're not even locking onto his chin, necessarily. So I believe what I first tried was shooting him, like jumping up in front of him and shooting. But you'll find out quickly that not only can you not damage him anywhere else, you can't even get close to him because he's surrounded by that lightning that'll also damage you. It's a very stressful fight.
That was a bit of a risky one.
Yeah, so this level can go actually pretty quick if you get some insane movement going early. But for the most part, like a lot of this run, it's kind of trivial and just dependent on what the game wants to give to you. Because as we kind of joked about earlier, which is really true, is that the game does not want you to be able to run through it so fast.
Let's try and get a little bit of height. Surprisingly, the levels after this one aren't particularly different. The game has its spikes in difficulty, and then you'll have, like, I don't know, a couple of levels that seem a lot easier out of nowhere.
Yeah, so what kind of sort of happens is, I believe maybe it's a case of where if you know what to do, it's fairly easy. If you don't know what to do, it might be a little more challenging, but it's not overwhelming. Essentially, the middle of this run becomes a little straightforward and a little more simplified, but it can decide to really derail your run if it wants to. But thankfully, when you die, you can just restart the level right after. You don't lose progress or anything like that.
Destroy the boulder that blocks the flow.
All right. So here's a really really cool cave level. A little different than the soaring around we've been able to do at this point. You can also do it here, but you know there's a wall in this case. So the idea here is right off the bat, he wants to get the Mercy Orb symbol, or I'm sorry, the Mercy Orb from the Mercy Orb symbol. And then you're just going to destroy a giant crystal at the very end that's blowing. That's blocking the flow of ki.
It is said that where people gather,
because ki is what's kind of purifying the darkness that's going on here.
Ki flows from the forest.
Again, we're grabbing the symbol. We're grabbing the Mercy Orb so that we can have more health. Thankfully, it's not too far out of the way. Most of the orbs we get are not far out of the way, and it's nice to have a little cushion of HP for the later parts of the game.
Before you find the essence, you must secure the flow of ki.
So as he said, that there is kind of a difficulty curve that kind of goes away a little bit towards like the meat and potatoes of the run, like right in the middle. It becomes sort of just run as fast as you can and let's get the mission done. And as you see, the dashing in this game is really cool. It's really useful. It's a simple movement. He's just holding the right trigger. And the movement in this game is actually really good as far as controlling it goes. And you'll see he's trying to do the upward slash near that bridge because it makes it a little more difficult if you destroy the bridge.
That was
the bridge,
really smooth.
That was really good, actually.
Yeah.
I'll be using that when I run this game next time.
So quite often, if you break something, and then you hit an enemy, they're just gonna fly all the way to the other side of the map. So if you see, at any point in the run, we try and stun lock the enemies, that's because if we don't do that, we're in for a really, really bad time.
Yeah, so it's kind of a small trade-off, right? So what happens is you can knock enemies into the environment. Some levels that's actually good because they take extreme damage from the environment. Especially in levels where we're using magic.
Yeah.
Most notably the dragon spell that kind of hones in on the enemy. If you can get you'll see on the run, if we can get an enemy that we're targeting with the dragon spell, which is basically like a heat-seeking spell, it'll allow you to get extra damage by knocking them into a wall or something, and they take a lot of damage that way. But the thing is, you yourself also take a lot of damage if an enemy knocks you into a wall. Utilizing the 3 light attacks into the spell attack, this is pretty straightforward. I think it only takes 2 combos worth. Nothing too crazy.
A dark, ancient forest.
So this is I would say the last level where you get a free run through the game.
The once guardians of this forest.
After this level, you got, what is it?
They were the
2 very,
embodiment
very
of the
difficult
will of
levels.
the trees.
And it's really where it picks up. And you've got to be a lot more careful with how you play.
But now,
yeah, so a lot of what this run becomes is risk versus reward, saving a few seconds here to possibly stay alive, or wasting a few to kind of increase your chances of getting through the level quicker. This is level 11. This is when we do a weapon pickup. We're getting the Jaws of the Mountain. A very actually interesting weapon. A lot of these weapons in this game are extremely unique from each other. We're going to quickly pick up the Jaws of the Mountain, and then at the very end there's a crystal we have to destroy, and then there's just going to be an entire swarm of what's called the Wood Deity monsters, and they're just little monsters. They go down quick. There's a lot.
Yeah.
These little guys here.
So if any of you remember the Dragon Guard free run at the start of the marathon,
I sense a great
it's going to be a nice callback to there when our frame rate becomes non-existent.
destroyed.
Yeah, so we're basically going to have around 40 to maybe 60-ish, maybe enemies on the screen at once. What I personally do here is I put my camera against the wall, and then I just turn my character around and shoot them without looking because it's a mess. You also unlock a weapon, I believe, for getting like a 200 or 300 hit combo here. So this is basically it. At this point, the enemies we're defeating is not, so as you can see, we're using our magic, but we're defeating more enemies, which is going to restore our magic. And the rate at which we restore magic is better than what we're using, so you can literally just sit here and do what he's doing now. And that's it. Like, they're just coming, they're swarming, and it's your job to take care of them. A pretty straightforward little level here. We got the Jaws of the Mountain to sell later to repair our sword to bring out the quote-unquote true power. Because we are going through the level, as I said, with a broken, essentially broken, for lack of a better term, weapon, being the weapon you start out with. This is also the weapon that he stole from the clan of assassins that he was in. Or mercenaries, I'm sorry. But so the reason why your life is, for the most part, dependent on your magic is the princess that was banished to the netherworld, which is what's spilling through here. She kind of brought him back to life because he almost died coming through, trying to escape the clan he was in that ordered him to kill his father. So he's kind of stuck in this limbo between life and death. But that's why you're essentially tied to your magic, because that's what's keeping you alive. And the princess also gave him like a new body, like new strengths in exchange for help. She wanted help in return for that. And by doing this, she's going to allow him to repent for all the sins that he accumulated by being the assassin he was.
Also, all of the bosses in the game will
Forest lies
give little remarks to his situation. Some of them will tease him about it.
The
Others will be a little confused on if he's dead or not.
To the world outside the seal.
So,
Yeah, so the game definitely revolves around Raiko and his story, and the enemies know of it. And if they don't, they do like to comment on it. It's very interesting. Because he is essentially being sent to take care of these enemies, to take care of the problems he caused, unfortunately, by running away from the mercenaries that he was a part of. That seal he opened is why all these enemies are spilling out into the open. But it was either that or kill his father, so he didn't want to kill his father. So he decided to do what he did. This is level 12. This is the Demon Raven King. By itself, not necessarily difficult, but we have now environmental properties that increase the difficulty. And honestly, in my opinion, just kind of make me get pretty tilted.
yeah.
So you're just being blown around in different directions, but the majority of this level can actually be skipped by jumping out. Now, I don't know if this was ever... I mean, if it wasn't intentional. I mean, it was probably intentional. But this is one of those things where if you know, you're good. But if you don't, you're probably going to have a bad time through the level. So here's the boss boom right off the bat. The Demon Raven King. The area below you are, for what I would guess to be poison plants of some sort, or slime, or some combination of. When you hit them, you do take damage, and it's actually really bad. Also, something really interesting about this level is the ground itself can actually be destroyed a considerable amounts, where you're almost clipping through the floor. This isn't even that bad of a start, honestly. He can start out really high, and it gets really
As long as we get one stun lock on him, we should be good.
Yes. So usually what I would do is I jump, dash, stun lock, jump, dash, stun lock. Unless he's extremely close. Because you're also... Okay. So, nothing new here. That's kind of almost expected to some degree. But... the hard thing to keep in mind here is that the jumping heavy attack, the downward slash stun lock attack, by itself is great, but now we're working with the wind, so we can actually be in range to hit him, and then it just won't hit because we get knocked around by the wind. So it adds a little difficult, I would say artificial difficulty.
There's also another little strategy the game never explains. But enemies, if you hit them from the front, will usually block your attack. But if you manage to get behind them, which is very useful in certain bosses, they won't be able to block your attack.
Right, so this game, it's unexplainable to a degree, because some of these bosses, these enemies, they will block 6-7 attacks in a row. especially in later levels where you're using spells that you're hoping will hit them, so you don't have to go all the way over to where the enemy is. You'll see being fairly tame for how bad it looks like it could be.
Yeah, this
But
is
Ameiii,
far worse than it is right now.
yeah, no, Ameii's handling it very well. I think you may do better here than I do. And notice the level below him was actually being destroyed. There's a few times where I've almost just clipped through the floor, but it does push you back out pretty quickly. Probably Demon Raven. So now we're also going to be doing another shopping after this. I'll let the words rock here.
Be sure you know what is true and what is false.
Oh, and apparently we get a sword here. I must have forgotten that.
But he was banished to a life beyond the ceiling. And there, he became a demon, and soon became their leader. After that, he met up with him, and lost to him in battle. He was sealed away in this land by the very man we seek. The sword in his chest is a remnant of that tragic battle. With the demon gone, energy flows to the essence once more.
Okay, so the shop we're gonna do here, looks like we're gonna have to sell first. The shop we're doing here, we're gonna do our first repair of the weapon. If I menu correctly.
A volcano dedicated.
So that will give us a lot more damage, but the extra damage drains down very quickly. You get maybe 100 hits with the sword before it's back to its fully broken state. But the reason we do it is just to make one of the harder levels in the game a little bit easier, maybe a little more consistent.
You must exercise.
Definitely, and that's when those were the jaws that we we picked up earlier. Sorry, my dog was eating my 3 kittens. She noticed that I was preoccupied. Alright, so straightforward, but fairly simple if you know what you're doing.
Yet still very scary as well.
Yes, so we're doing the 1, 2, 3 light attacks followed by the magic. These are the giant ogres. I do believe we revisit them a little bit later as well.
We do. So not only are these ogres extremely strong, they can also knock you into the terrain, which, well, in itself it does extra damage. But there's also a lot of things in the area that can light you on fire, just like that little flame did over there. I'm gonna use a cure status to get word of that now. But in addition to losing almost all of your health from a single hit, you'll also be put on fire, which will just finish you off before you have any chance to do anything. So, playing incredibly safe here.
Yeah, so the idea being, you want to kill these ogres, but also a reoccurring theme, you want to be aware of what's going on around you, because you can get fairly surrounded by these flame spirits. and they do DOT. They do damage over time that can definitely add up. It's a little challenging to get hit by these ogres. It's possible to, but if you play it safe, you will waste quite a bit of time trying to make sure that the enemies aren't going to knock you around. Because as soon as you get hit into the wall, you're going to be in panic mode because it just does so much damage.
I'm gonna play it safe. So there's a restore a life up there, gives me 1 extra orb of life back, and there's also a damage buff over here if I remember. At this level, yes.
Yeah. So this is really good, and I actually always forget to get this, but this just takes care of them very quickly. 1, 2, 3, gone.
And that makes the level a lot safer than it originally is. Still gotta be very careful. I'm not gonna get hit by one of those. I have been completely one-shot by them before.
They make sure the environments are made specifically to just not work for you at all in this level. So the raised damage, it has its peak when you pick it up, and then it just progressively does less and less over time.
Kill others, so you may live.
So now that we've gotten rid of the ogres,
the act of living itself is sin.
I keep forgetting there's a context being spoken.
How is one to endure such a lonesome and dreadful sin?
Alright.
Panic mode in the chat. So what are we doing here?
Alright. Straight into the level here. Scarlet Path is what I believe probably be fairly difficult if you're not really thinking.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're just going to cruise right to the end of it. We're going to float up and then forward. There's little symbols on the ground, I don't know what you would call them. They're little glowing areas on the ground that restore your magic because your magic is going to be draining really fast here. The level itself, I believe, is also draining your magic. As you can see, you're covered by that blackness. These little crested floor areas that are circular, they restore your magic so that you can continue on. Now, I believe one of these can actually be skipped if you're doing well enough, but it's still in itself not that difficult.
Yeah, if you take the intended route, this level is much more difficult.
Yeah, I don't even think I've ever even taken that way, and I imagine it takes a lot longer, because it looks like there's a lot of twists and turns.
It does.
But that's all there is to this level. We're just going up, we're kind of collecting these to restore our magic, and this should be good. We're basically just cut straight through the center of the level. Now, let's see here. I do believe this is where we're going to be doing another equip after this.
Or maybe this too.
But in my opinion, this game its main theme is sort of like dread and just kind of loneliness as he's trying to do what he can, and everything around him is kind of just, not very uplifting. There's nothing really uplifting about this game at all, and I think that's very interesting. So we're equipping our staff, which enhances our magic. And then now into the Sea of Fire. This is level 15.
A mountain of fire.
Wait, is this?
The essence of fire.
I think this is that one.
This is the water spirit one, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this level is, I guess it can be pretty annoying, but I've had situations that have gone bad, but that really applies to any level. We're going to be picking up a butterfly spell down near the bottom, and then trying to get rid of the main boss here, the water spirit. He can be pretty annoying, especially when you're trying to lock onto him with all the enemies flying around. But hopefully things work out for us, and the idea is my mission when I usually get here is to try to get him to hit a wall like that.
So now we have to hunt him down and lock onto him again. That's where a lot of the difficulty in this level comes in, because the game, although it does a lot of things well, lock on in a couple of levels, particularly this one, is, I guess, one of the weak points of the game.
Yeah, and that's mostly because they do kind of throw a lot of enemies at you, and really in unfortunate spots. These enemies want to swarm you as well as anywhere you go they want to follow. And they're not slow whatsoever, they keep up with you the entire way. Sustain MP is really good. It just means, you know, essentially what it sounds like. He can cast his spells without worrying about the magic, which in turn he won't have to worry about losing HP or dying, as we explained before.
Nice if I could lock onto him.
This is kind of your textbook situation where there's enemies surrounding you as well as the boss somewhere intermingled in between.
There it is.
And this is also why Sustain MP is very useful here, and thankfully it's so close, because you're going to be doing a lot of upward thrusting as well as dashing around in some spots. And it could be worse. Oh well, I would say by his HP, it's getting pretty worse.
Can't get much worse than this.
Alright. This is really close.
It should just be one more rotation, I think.
So at this point, he's obviously way out of the camera, but I do believe the lock-on still applies here.
Yeah.
That might be a wall hit there.
That was a wall hit, but he teleported away.
Yeah, he got out of there. So here now, the lock-on is a huge factor right now.
I am pretty much just fighting with the lock-on. He's all the way up there. It's an awful spot.
Thankfully, this level isn't required to get through at a certain time, or else it'd be much, much, much harder.
Alright, well I'm out of magic.
That's a problem.
That is a very big problem.
Now notice his life is going down because of the magic's gone. At this point, we have to just whoa. Oh, I thought he died. At this point, we just have to hope that... Oh, we got a little bit of magic now. Just enough to get a few dashes in, and then... Oh!
He died to the environment, so that's actually an option.
So, that's not likely, but we love that. That's good. That... I don't remember if Dolphin used magic here. I don't necessarily remember.
No, magic was one of the strategies that we introduced later on.
Yeah, so magic, completely new, kind of made it a little more safe and a little more, I don't have to chase this boss around and hope its RNG allows me to get to it. We're going to be equipping the sword here, because we no longer need the magic in this. It's when we fight the Crimson King. This is the guy.
Ancient bamboo forest.
Very interesting boss here. The idea here, in theory, we want to jump, dash, well, at least what I do. At the very beginning I jump, I dash forward, and then we're going to be doing that downward heavy thrust. And you can actually stun lock him with this if everything goes really good. It's more so a thing of execution, timing the jump after he's getting up, because if you go too early, he'll just iframe through it. If you do it too late, he blocks it and jumps away.
Ooh, that's a weird opener.
That was a very, very weird opener. You cannot attack him from the front whatsoever unless he has his guard down. It's always for just like a split second. So Okay, so he took off. Ideally, you want to be able to keep him stun locked. It's just not that easy to get consistent with, especially if you're not running this game like every day.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to restart that one. So there is a reward that we want from this level, but we have to complete the level very, very quickly to get it.
Yeah, so we have 70 seconds to get through the level. The only way really to get that is to stun lock him here. He can get away once, but he has to go down quickly after. Other than that, he looks very cool. He's a very interesting boss.
Cutting it close here.
So I would say here's our last chance. Yep, that's good. Yeah, you definitely want to walk up on him and then hop over or next to, because he does have a hitbox to like his left and right-ish areas. But anything in the front, it just will not work.
There we go. That should be good.
Regrets.
Yeah, I think it'll be close, but it should be okay.
He makes
We're looking for 110.
life.
Below 110, I'm sorry. 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Then
to get these beads that we need.
To blame for his fate. This pain I feel is proof of my
Wow, my dog
free
really wants to
will.
eat that blanket.
So, a lot of story going on here.
Raiko, what say you? Do you live life of your own accord?
Nice. So that level really shows you how overpowered that jumping downward heavy thrust really is in this game.
A land of dark mists.
So, do you want to explain what happened there? Because
Raiko.
I'm not too sure either.
I'll be honest, I don't really get that
You
part.
cannot die
Uh,
just yet.
Yeah, no, I can't.
No.
Listen
It's
to me
a lot of
now.
this game is fairly vague if you're not
Your
following the
physical
entire
body
thing.
has been sealed away by
Um,
powerful magic.
It's more or less telling us what's
Yes,
happening with
take your
Raikou, and
ability
it
to
basically fills in the
exist in
blanks
the
as far as
living
what
world.
happened as we go along. And I do believe, I could be wrong, this is a hot take, wild guess here. I think the person speaking to him is the individual who resurrected him.
Yes.
The princess
I
that
remember
was.
her name, but it is her, yeah.
In my hands. No matter how powerful he becomes, your soul is safe. It looks as though he can no longer ignore our presence.
But she's essentially guiding Raikou through these areas to dispatch of the darkness that he sort of
Do you
leaked.
still have the will to
And
fight?
she's also helping him. You know, she gave him this
If
new
so,
form, this armor,
Then you must seek out
and
the
these
8
powers that he
soul
has now
cores.
that he didn't have before all of this, for the record. while also using the ceremonial sword that he stole from the group of assassins he had joined mercenaries. I keep saying this. But
You will once again be able to enter the land of the living.
right, so he's doing this in exchange to restoring the world for this individual as well as restoring the land itself, and he can get out of this limbo, this in-between life and death that he's currently in. Level 17, we're just gonna do the old faithful floating as we always do. We're gonna go to the very end and then kill this giant axe Blackwing. Also worth noting, something really interesting about this game, there's a lot of really cool made art for the enemies. Is when you go into the level, before you really start the level, you can look at the enemies for the level, and it's really interesting art in my opinion that they made for it. But this level, I don't know what else you would do besides this, even casually. At this point in the game, it's showing you that floating and just kind of reaching as far as you can benefits you. There's no point in this game where you can overextend with this method to a point to where you're not just going to finish the level.
And if it just seems incredibly dark, I guess that's just how the game is in certain spots. There's lots of, I don't know, visual effects that make it hard to see where you're going in this part of the game. I don't really want to call it render distance, but the distance you can see is greatly reduced. I guess the gimmick there is they try to make it much harder for you. I need to shop here. They try to make it much harder to get to where you want to go. I meant to shop here.
Right, so you want to, I do believe, these is another giant ogre area where I'll prepare and equip my sword as well as butterfly too. So we're encountering these ogres. This time it's actually a lot more difficult because of the crow demons around them, because they can almost one-shot you, I believe here. They can be very frustrating. This is a good reason why we want a lot of HP throughout this run for levels like this.
So I'm going to be skipping over the remainder of the story for, I don't know, about 5 or 6 levels. Because a lot of it isn't particularly relevant. It goes back, tells you a lot of things you may already know. Just trying to breeze through these levels as fast as possible.
We need to, yeah, because towards the end, we might need that time.
Yeah.
So we're about, we're a little bit past halfway of the game. Again, kind of missions that maybe casually would be kind of difficult, but in the speedrun, since we know what's coming, we know what to expect, we can kind of anticipate and equip accordingly. This isn't so bad. I think the crow demons make it a little more difficult for me personally, but if you take the right movements, it should be fairly okay. But as with any level in this game, in the back of your mind, you're always just assuming that you can die around every corner. And to add to the whole darkness of the area, the distance of sight, we have to also understand that we're in like a netherworld. We're in an area where darkness is slowly consuming everything. And I think they really used that to their advantage when making these levels. Great strat here for luring all of these crows that would otherwise just mess you up. You jump down here, you let them come to you, and then you just light them up with the butterfly spell that we got from the water spirit level.
He was not meant to be alive.
Yeah, so really in this area, you do not want any of the, look, you see like the damage he took there at full life. You really do not want to be fighting these ogres with one of those guys floating around. Also, something we didn't mention, your life orbs, if it's not completely depleted, it'll actually restore itself over time. So if you have 2.5 life orbs, that half will become full over a short period of time. But once it's gone, it's completely gone until you heal it. It doesn't go, it doesn't fully restore orbs on its own.
extra weapon.
Nice.
Yeah, that's one of the RNG weapons. You can occasionally get it from some of the enemies, but it's not guaranteed.
It's a nice little bonus, but at the same time, we don't necessarily need it yet. I mean, something like that could be added to the run. There could be points where you restore your weapon, but as of right now, it's not really that big of a deal. Level 19, as most of these levels are, you're running straight through. This can be a little difficult here because of the black smoke that's shooting from the little pockets in the wall here.
So you would think, hey, developers probably put this on a cycle, right? Well, it really does not feel like they did. There is no good way to get through this tunnel. Luckily,
Nope.
The
You
rest
have to
of the
muscle
level
through
isn't
it.
too bad, but this one tunnel sure makes up for the rest of it.
It's that tunnel went as bad as it probably could. You just have to muscle your way through it and hope for the best. So even at 1 life orb here, I'd say we're pretty okay. It might be a challenge here because you have the environment falling down around you as the Omni stone boss kind of shoots this hyper beam, for lack of a better term, around you. He's going to be shooting it at the ceilings around you. So either way you go, you're going to get hit by the ceiling as well as the enemies also around you. This is also one of the areas that tends to lag.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, there's a lot going on.
All of these levels are previous levels that we've been. Some of them are darker, some of them are flipped upside down like this one. Some of them are exactly the same and just had different enemies.
So here we have the Omni Stone boss. Not really that challenging if you know about the 3-bite attack into the magic spell. Though I can't really say that with too much confidence because I have died here.
Yeah. When I was de-rusting this, I had a very bad time on that level.
And that's it. That's level 19. So here we go, level 20 of 29. You know, we're cruising for the most part, but boy, the game really just it puts up a wall here shortly, and I believe in Ameiii, but I don't know how much that'll help and how far that will get him.
Yeah, it's definitely a case of how much the game wants you to do well.
So here we have another boss that for me is very annoying because the RNG dictates whether or not he runs really far, or he's going to run no matter what, but where he goes is up to the game. This is the Miss Lionette boss.
Funnily enough, you can also take damage from the terrain that he's running through.
Yeah, so that's one thing that this game does well. Is it's making sure that the bosses also kind of have the disadvantages of the environment that you have. This is actually a boss that, for a time, when I would get that drop we got in the ogre area, I would actually sell that to repair my sword for this boss. Because this boss is not fun if he's not being cooperative.
Not having much luck here.
So, running back where he is now is probably the worst case scenario. There's also a weapon back here that can also be used for repairing later, repairing your main sword later, that I sometimes pick up. It's not necessary. But this is why this area is bad.
Yeah.
So, what was going on there, there's a lot of fire around you. There's also enemies back there. I didn't necessarily see them, but I know there are some
They
enemies
had
back
this
there.
but it really is, like, this level is bad enough as it is, and when you get bad luck, it just gets worse.
Yeah, to really say the least, because this boss can actually be pretty simple if it wants to be. It's expected to run back there, but not all the way back. I would say it's about a 50-50 shot that it's going to go where it is now. And if it goes back there, unless it goes out really fast, you're just gonna have a bad day. The environment damage that you take here really starts to have its toll. Now he's running out. That's great. Hopefully he doesn't run back in.
For context, I think my PB for this level is around 19 seconds, which is just stun locking him perfectly the whole way. But
Right.
it's not always possible.
Once he gets an open area and you're not hitting, it's going to take off. But it's the same with the Crimson King. It's just if you give them any wiggle room, they're going to take off. And sometimes the game just decides it wants them to have an advantage, and they will run off.
Oh no, not back there. Oh boy.
Again, worst case scenario. I don't think I've seen it happen 3 times before. This is new. But now, actually, that was not a favorable attack.
I don't think this could go much worse, actually.
No, this is the worst I've seen. Okay, so that was nice because when the 3rd time he had gone back there, then the majority of the environment had actually disappeared at that point, which is great.
So now we're gonna swap back to our magic for level level.
So this is the 2nd level that is an auto-scroller. This is by far the most annoying auto-scroller. The biggest reason being this purifying spirit that you're trying to protect can also be damaged by you. To the point you can actually kill it pretty quickly. So you want to get rid of the enemies that are going to, hopefully not, but they can surround him without touching him. Sometimes you'll get lucky and... Well, we're using a spell that locks in on the enemy, so this is definitely the best spell to use for this level.
Yeah.
Because you're less likely to get friendly fire onto the Purifying Spirit. This auto-scroller is hell. I don't like it. I can't stand it. It's not scrolling.
It's also a case where one single enemy getting through will kill you before you even realize it's there.
Yeah, so his HP bar goes down pretty quick. These enemies, I don't know if they hit hard or if he's just... I'm assuming he's just really weak. But it doesn't take much to take the spirit down, and then, hooray, you have to do the entire auto-scroller over again, and it's just a bad time. With the spell we're using, the dragon spell that we're using, it can be mitigated extremely well because, like, as I said, the magic does trace the enemy. But if the enemy is unfortunately around the spirit, there's a 50-50 shot that one of those spells could hit that spirit that you're trying to protect here. If you go out, there's an invisible range around this enemy, or around the spirit rather, that if you go outside of that range, it'll actually start depleting your magic at a quicker rate. So you want to stay within a certain threshold of what will be allowed without actually breaking through that limitation.
Yeah.
So the game
kind of
forces
safe to
you.
go out of it, but you really don't want to be stunning out there. Like right now, my magic is draining extremely quickly.
Yeah, you see his magic as well as doing the spell he's doing, it's just eating it alive. And the only way of restoring that is some enemies will... I don't think every enemy does. I think it's a certain drop, maybe? Or maybe it is the enemy you
I think it's every enemy, but a random amount.
Yeah, and these smaller enemies, which is what the majority of the levels made up of, they don't restore a considerable amount. It's not enough to justify just taking off and trying to get rid of them ahead of time. Or at least not from what we've gathered so far. Also, landing in water, I do believe, though, drains your magic faster.
Yes. Because
the water is tainted by the darkness that's kind of consuming everything. But that's essentially what this level becomes, is keeping an eye on where the spirit is, as well as the enemies around it. If you can, you want to get rid of the enemies ahead of time, because if you run ahead of the spirit, you can actually aggro the enemies before the spirit gets to them. But you also have to balance that out with where your magic is.
a lot of friendly fire there, but And don't leave
So
us all the enemies.
Yeah, this is pretty good. You can usually grab the weapon over here. He might have to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, because you have to meet him there anyways, or else it doesn't work. So here's another weapon that we pick up that could be used to repair our beginning weapon. And we did it, wow. This level can be a headache, so that was really good. Level 21
forever
down.
it didn't exist.
I would live a happy life if that level wasn't there. Alright.
Yeah.
Level 22, another level where we're going to be floating around. The gravity in this level is kind of wonky, where you kind of just get launched by any small movement. You want to kill all of the Axe Blackwings here. Similar to level 15 with the Water Spirit. Just a little more consumed by the darkness now, by the Neverworld.
Purge this place of it all, Raikou.
This can be a little bit of a challenge because when you get to a point where you can't necessarily find one of the Blackwings and you're getting low on magic, it can be scary. This is also a level where they can block a lot of your spells, and that can be very annoying. Generally, best case scenario, they don't necessarily block a lot, and they also hit the environment when you strike them with the spell. If they block your sword attack, it actually resets the whole 3 light attack into the heavy spell attack. So you want to be close enough to where you can guarantee a hit, and they won't necessarily be able to dodge out of the way, but you don't want to be too close that they block your attack, halting your combo that you're trying to use to get rid of that fully charged spell that will damage them and hopefully knock them into the environment.
Yep,
But a good thing about this level is that it does keep you up to date for the most part about how many's left, which is great.
I have no idea where the last guy is, so...
I think he's usually on the bottom left of where you're at, or the right of where you're at. He's either near the beginning or... Okay, well that's broad. Near the beginning or the end. Yeah, back that way, I think, on the right side. I think they hide, or there's even been cases where they're just directly above you, really high up, unfortunately. But the one I usually miss is right where you're going.
Yeah,
That's usually
I
where
had
the one
that
I miss.
one. Yep, here, maybe. He's somewhere. Back left.
They all start out in the same areas, but the problem is they do veer really... Oh, one of the first ones, interesting. But they do veer off on their own. Alright. So, level 23, the Canyon of Death. You're not going to decide... The game is going to decide how this goes for you.
Yeah.
But it should be okay. But I'm not guaranteeing anything. This is the weapon. I'm sorry. This is the level that has another time limitation. You want to get this done in 139 or less for the butterfly level 3 spell. When you defeat a certain amount, what happens is that it adds the element of lightning around you, or thunder. Lightning, but yeah, lightning will one-shot you for the most part. It'll probably one-shot you in most cases.
Went really smooth.
That was awesome.
It
10 out of
does
10.
not go that smooth.
10 out of 10 would play again. That was great.
ImJecht, how do you feel about this level right here?
Okay. So I'm not expecting this to go quickly. There was a time in my life, I was a very young, naive man. I thought this level was pretty simple because the game made me believe that it was so. Little did I know that I had just gotten very lucky that one time. A lot can go wrong, as it is right now, immediately.
Yep.
So, a few things can happen here. These are the Wind Slashers. They're a group of enemies that collectively make a boss. not physically collectively. The level itself, along with the wind slashers, they are a boss. Okay. So here's what can happen. So what happened to him, he got silenced, which means automatic restart because you can't cast magic. So one, you don't want to get silenced, you don't want to get hit too much, and you want to spam butterfly 3 as much as possible, normally towards the wall, because they tend to gather up on the wall if you're by it. They'll kind of go in the corner there, and they'll try to run past the front of you, and then run at you. So when in this game, with the way the collision works with the spells, when the spells hit the wall, it bursts, and actually that burst cloud actually damages the bosses as well. So ideally you want them collected at the wall, but in this situation, if they're all in one direction, it actually works really well. But again, keep in mind, this can go bad very quickly.
Yeah, they very well known to one-shot you, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it.
So this starts, that was amazing.
That went really well.
Okay, now we're going to equip Dragon 3. So what happened there was he got fairly good RNG, but he also executed it extremely well. I probably would have died there. Oh god.
Yep, this level. So, welcome to the worst part of the run. This is the Hydra.
Okay, so this is the Yamata no Orochi Hydra. Casually, you would have no problem here. For the speedrun, we're not so fortunate. So the best weapon, the Orchid Malevolence, in order to obtain that weapon, you have to defeat the Hydra. Casually, you probably don't want to defeat the Hydra. Maybe not until later anyways. Now, the reason being, the weapon he drops, the Orchid Malevolence, it one-shots any enemy it touches. Any enemy, yeah. But on the flip side, you yourself get one-shot by any enemy. So the idea is we want to collect this weapon, and we want to one-shot the final boss. Now he has 3 phases, so it technically turns into a 3-attack ordeal, but each attack is a one-shot on each phase. So the first thing we want to do right away, we're clearing the environment. One thing that's cool about this game is you can choose to come back to a level in its current state, which means the destruction that happened in this level previously will carry over. It makes it a lot easier to handle what's going on when you don't have these pillars all around you, because the Hydra is destroying them all. It makes it a lot easier. It's just like a little added difficulty that we don't need. Casually, you would do what he's doing now and be done and move along.
But we're not that lucky.
Unfortunately, the best weapon we need can be gotten from this Hydra being defeated. So, one thing that kind of lets you know that you are meant to grind this game out in previous levels, aside from what we've already mentioned, like the time limits that yield better items and whatnot, you can actually go back to these stages at any point and just revisit them and grind them out a little bit. Now with the environment destroyed, it'll make it easier, but it doesn't mean it's easy, because it's not, unfortunately. What we're keeping in mind here is we want to destroy these crests on the wall, these seals, but these spirits also drain an insane amount of your magic, which, as we previously mentioned, do mitigate how long you can be in a level, how much magic you can use, and whether or not you stay alive or not. So you want to be able to get through here, destroy these seals without taking the fewest amount of hits from these spirits as possible. Unfortunately, these spirits infinitely respawn, so the ones you destroy here will just be coming right back anyways. So the original strat here was to hope and pray to RNGesus that he does this attack here, this disc shot, which you can knock back at him. When he does that fireball move that hits the ground, that's your cue to do the 1, 2, 3 light attack into the spell. Being also conscious of these spirits that are trailing you everywhere, because they're going to decide whether or not you get a good amount of attacks. Right now, I think what Ameiii is going to be doing is using the remainder of his his magic to dash forward here and there, because we're at such a low magic count that if we did one spell, it wouldn't be too good. So this isn't looking good.
That wasn't too good.
No. So you essentially are counting on the Hydra to do that disc attack as much as possible. And also, you want the spirits around you to be doing fairly well and not really trying to get in your way. I've spent, me and Ameiii did a race here a few weeks ago, and I do believe I was here for around almost an hour or so. So it can get bad.
Pretty.
It was, yeah, it can get very bad.
This is one of the 2 safety saves I do have. The other safety save was actually for the level just before this one. In my, I guess, de-rust for this marathon, just in case Otogi, did come in as a filler, I lost over half an hour the previous level.
Yes, and the previous level did go very well, which gives us a little more wiggle room here, but you really don't want to spend too much time on Hydra. With during the speedrun itself, you're expected to lose quite a bit of time here. But with if you were to get, a first try Hydra, that'd be amazing, but it's just not likely. This is the one level.
Decent so far.
Yeah, actually, he's giving you pretty good movement here. This is the level that basically keeps me from grinding this game. Not gonna lie.
This is the thing that keeps me awake at night.
It's... Especially up to this point, we haven't really dealt with anything so crazy, aside from maybe the wind slashers beforehand. But this is just a whole other level. Like a whole other level of difficulty. And it gets, it kind of stays at that place the next few stages after this.
So I'm going to give this one more try, and then I'm just going to load the safety save so we can see the rest of the game.
That's a good idea.
It's being conscious of the time.
This is definitely gonna... This can take time. This can take a lot of your time. And as far as I know, there's really no cut, dry way of just saying, okay, I'm going to do this, and there's a good chance I'm going to make it through. Because it's just whether or not the game wants you to get through or not. There's nothing you can do to really safely, even semi-guarantee getting through this, and by defeating the Hydra.
We are, in essence, hoping for some RNG attempts. There is nothing else we can do. We already do the most damage we know how to do at this point in the game. With how under-leveled we are, this is, more than we ever really thought we were able to do.
Yeah, and I would actually even argue this might be number 3 auto-scroller. I do believe this is an auto-scroller for the most part.
Somewhat, yeah. Those are some really bad attacks.
I'm trying to get a view on his life bar. I haven't seen it just yet.
Okay, I'll be loading in. So, if you do manage to kill him, basically, which one do I have to?
Alright, so we've made it through the tower, Hydra's dead, we got the weapon. Moving on.
Yeah, we got the weapon. That's what matters.
Yes, just imagine in this magical speedrun world, we got through it. So here we are, level 26, really coming to the end of the game. This is going to be...
Hold on. I need to swap over to the sword. I can't break the building.
So level 26, you're just going to be collecting some stone orbs. Straightforward concept. It can go south. Not likely, but it certainly can. And this as well as the next level are probably the easiest levels towards the end, and then after that you'll see. So we want to defeat the giant mercy orb symbol here. There's a whole flood of them, but we want to get the big one down. That'll drop one of the stone orbs that we need to collect to get through the level. I do believe there's 5 stone orbs.
He's still not dead.
There we go.
Not dead? I thought he died. Ooh.
Did you not collect? Or?
There it is. Getting trolled by the game.
We got a raise attack, which
would have been useful there.
But now the last of the orbs, you kind of just float around and grab. You don't necessarily have to be concerned with the enemies around you anymore. Another alternate strat you could do since Ameiii was on come back here first and collect the defense orb, which will make that fight a little less scary.
Would definitely have been the safer option. I can't deny that one.
Well, with how quickly we got through the Hydra, you know, we had time to spare if you did die. That's okay.
Did we really?
I mean, as far as I saw, it looked pretty quick to me. So, level 26 down, we have 3 left.
I sense another shift in leave. That place.
So, level 27. One of the easiest levels in the game, if not the easiest. Maybe after the first level.
So, here we go. Yeah. So, level 27. This is your quintessential Demon Souls final boss. Feel bad for the lore that is carrying this monster. It's more so a lore boss than it is a challenge. This is the demon god Nayuto. He's breaking loose towards the end of the game here, and you need to keep him sealed away. So we're knocking in these nails to ensure that he doesn't get loose. From what I remember, this is the strongest being in existence. Funny enough, you end up just not fighting him whatsoever. But he is the god. He is the demon god. So as far as lore goes, if he gets loose, you know, the world's gone. So since we're towards the end of the game here, went a little too early, but since we're getting towards the end of the game, we want to seal the demon god so that he doesn't get loose and destroy everything, because we can't contest with his power whatsoever. So, you know, the game was nice enough to not make us fight him. But
it's the world. That's where I keep my stuff.
And it reminds me a lot of Demon Souls, where the final boss is more so a placement of lore than it is a placement of challenge. And as we've said before, made by the same people. This is a From Software game as well as Demon Souls. In case anyone didn't catch that part, the individuals that made the Dark Souls games and, you know, all the games that came after. This is From Software, one of their Xbox exclusive titles that I believe is not backwards compatible with 360, so the only way to play it is on the original Xbox itself. With that being said, you're not going to find an emulator of it at all, either.
No. The only way to really get this is original hardware.
The time has
Which, if
come.
you know, if this game's interesting, it's definitely interesting. It's I like the sounds it made. The sounds in this game are really what drew me to it as a kid.
I do not know the future. I shall fulfill my ancient promise.
So, level 8, 28. Without a doubt, the hardest level in the game, by far.
Yeah, so we're gonna repair our sword here, I believe.
Thanks for the reminder.
This is the boss rush. So this is going to be the main core bosses that we fought in the game. So that would be the wind slashers, as well as the the soul caller boss, and then one of the black things, I believe. I don't remember which one exactly. But it's broken down in a way that is actually not fun. You'll see.
We're shackled with the burden of unending time. When water no longer flows, it turns dank and polluted. The court and palace turn to ash, as fleeting as a dream. Raiko, was it? Can you defeat my 4 guardians? I am interested to see what you are capable of.
So, first one we're gonna go for is the wind slash. It's not really as simple as just going to.
Right, so this is when the collision of the game and the environment around it needs to be used. There's these great glass standings here that you want to knock the enemies through. An alternate strat here, ideally, would be that you yourself get knocked through these, but it's just too much damage to really be okay with. Now, if you defeat all the enemies and the glass isn't destroyed, you have to wait for them to spawn. There you go.
And you'll probably notice things don't always go where you aim.
So, right. So the spells in this game, the butterfly we have, the hitboxes of the butterfly is so wide that it, for the most part, you'll notice, kind of launch the enemies in directions you don't expect. The same with your weapon. It's just very dependent on where the enemy's facing, as well as how you're hitting and where you're hitting them. Will depend on whether or not you hit the glass here. And then, even furthermore, after we get to this, we have to hope that the wind slashers really are fairly okay. They're not that dangerous in this game, this level here, but it can be unpredictable to a point where you can die pretty quickly.
We're not too concerned about our health. As long as we don't die here, all of the wind slashes will drop health for us.
Yeah, so the wind slashers, I do believe, drop 3 life orbs, or maybe 4 even, which, you know, it's guaranteed full life coming out. See, that's a case where Ameiii was clearly standing right in front of the enemy, as well as facing the glass straight on, and the enemy still kind of flew to the side. So that's not always fun, yeah. Oh, so what happened there was that the camera angle was sort of faced towards Ameiii while also being on the glass, which actually made the enemies invisible. The only way he was able to see any of the enemies was being locked on the one as he is there, and that's the only way to keep track of it. downside being if there's more than one enemy, you have no way of knowing. So what happened is Ameiii got damaged quite a bit, and then trying to get out of that situation, he got spun on and killed by getting knocked into the environment, which, as we said before, is a huge factor in this game, as well as this level here. It definitely can be a factor.
So you'll see that twice now I've had to quit out and restart the game. Inside the middle pillar there's a raise attack, and we really need that for the second boss.
Yes, so this pillar here we destroy for just the purpose of having more room to kind of maneuver. The second pillar, or the middle, yeah, so you see that item floating there, that's going to do a raise attack buff onto us, which, as we've mentioned prior, was a double damage boost. We want that for the first boss because he can be very unpleasant. Running in, you can really walk the line, follow your P's and Q's, and knock out everything, and then go in, and then that boss just decides he doesn't like what you're doing and end the run.
Yeah.
Or in the fight, anyways.
It is a straight up one shot. I believe he does 4.5 orbs of damage, and yet again I have forgotten to pick up one of them, so...
So... Oh, did they die?
There's one alive, I think he's in here.
Okay, so that was the wind slashers that we had saw the level right before the Hydra. These guys, they're a lot more manageable here because they're all kind of stuck in one room, but they do run out. But the spell's range is so wide, it's kind of like a shotgun blast of this butterfly spell that it really allows you to cover the entire doorway.
And this is where the Bless RNG starts. Ooh, that was close.
Yes. So Ameii's kind of going with the ground approach, just running in and hoping for the best, which is, you know, no better or no worse than the other. He does die in 3 attacks, but the problem is he's famous for kind of blocking a lot, and then he can block enough to where the enemies around start to really have an effect on how the flow of the battle is going. But that went really well, which means that we have a good chance of getting through this.
If I can lock on. Ooh, that's
So
really bad.
So he definitely wants to go up as fast as possible. This is the Soul Caller boss, which at one point you had seen surrounded by a lot of enemies. When the moon came, it was invincible. Now the attack he's doing here is the upward lunge, a very good attack for this boss, but this boss is not being kind whatsoever, and unfortunately it's mostly because of the screw up in the beginning, but that's okay. The boss isn't horribly unmanageable, or at least it hasn't been for me, but I have also not gotten this deep into this battle, so it looks pretty scary.
Yeah, there is not much room for error at this point.
So we have to wait out and hope that she loses her shield of invincibility here. Now we're going to dash and go back to the attacks. Yep.
If the shield doesn't hit her, I think we should be good. I'll play it
Good
safe
stuff.
and grab the other health orbs from earlier.
Cool. So each of these bosses also grant you a life orb, which is pretty important depending on how the boss goes, but you know, it's right there. It's no hassle to just grab it. Here's another boss that I've had go wrong, but it shouldn't be too bad even if it does. Coming after he grabs this orb here, but it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, it is the final boss of the boss rush.
Yes.
And what I mean, yes, and what I mean by that, it's not necessarily the final boss as in like, oh, this is the great one. No, this is just it's a basic boss rush. No boss is stronger than the other for the most part. It's just, you destroy them 4 in any order you want, and the way we sort of decide which order to go in is kind of the riskier ones first. That way, you know, if we die, or if we get through all the other ones, we don't want the risky one to be last, and we wasted all that time for nothing. So basic rule, run in, dash forward, and then do the heavy downward slash. Hopefully he gets stunned. In this case he didn't, but that's okay. It's really not that big of a deal.
That's a pretty good spot for him to be in though. So we just want to kind of stun lock him and get him over before he has any chance to do any real damage to us.
Yeah, and Ameiii just did just that. I mean, you want to do like a micro jump, because your feet just need to leave the ground, and then you can initiate the downward thrust. So it's just like a little up and down. And also a little thing you guys may not have noticed, the moon was red when you went into that boss battle, but when you come out, it's actually back to normal. So that was awesome. That was the boss rush down, and all we have left is the final boss.
It appears you are worthy.
So, now we're going to equip the Orchid Malevolence, which we got from the Hydra that we definitely killed on stream. Definitely saw that.
It was great. Very fast, very impressive.
So, we will die in one hit from anything. But we will also kill anything in one hit. And it just so happens to be incredibly useful in a speedrun. Because without it, there will be no way we could kill this guy. It would take hundreds of hits to kill. You would run out of magic before you got anywhere close.
Yes, so notice when you'll see when the battle starts, our main character here, he has essentially no life whatsoever. One hit from anything.
Certain goals cannot be reached. Certain sins cannot be erased. It is the one thing I have learned these 1,000 years. The limits of humanity shall no longer bind me.
So time is coming up on the third hit.
The flames of the stars for 10,000 days. I am a god, and you shall be my offering to the heavens. Your soul has gained much power. The princess has done well. Now that your soul is ready, it shall become my final sacrifice. To fulfill the promise I made long ago, I face my final test. Soon the fate of this godless world will rest in my hands.
Alright, so this is Mishizane. He's pretty much your stereotypical final RPG boss. He's floating around, he's got the long sword, you know, everything from A to Z, he's got it all. So that was phase 1. Again, this weapon kills everything in one hit.
My flesh burned by the flames of 10,000 nights we shed.
Alright, so here's Mishizane, a little more anime this time. He's really stepped it up. And he's gone.
I am dead.
On to phase 3.
I am the stars. I am the heavens. The fires of hell echo in the skies, and I am reborn. Grant me power through your light.
Alright, so he's reached full anime, alright, we're full god mode here. Probably the strongest thing in the whole game.
And we're coming up to time.
Yeah, so you really want to be careful and make sure you dodge all his attacks, because he can pretty much take care of you in one shot.
Time.
And he's gone.
I die, despised, exiled from this world, alone.
Very anticlimactic.
This is the path I chose.
Yes, casually you've probably broken your disc at this point, but through the speedruns, thank God the final boss is actually fairly easy. Aside from the fact that I died to him in my actual PB. But that should not happen.
To bring new life into this dark world.
The real final boss of this game is the Hydra.
Is this what we waited 1,000 years for? Those who are separated are forever doomed to be apart. Michisane, were you seeking nothing more than a dream? Was it wrong to believe we needed power to live?
So that is Otogi. That is the any percent. There is an extra little boss at the end if you do a second playthrough, but we won't be doing that today. I don't have a safety save for it set up, sadly. Just like to say thank you for letting us show off this game in the marathon. It was a filler game that, you know, we didn't think we would have the chance to, but it's great to show it off again for the first time in, I believe, 7 years. It was actually ran in one of the first ESA marathons, so been around a long time.
Yeah. And it's also worth noting, this game does have a Moonlight Sword, like every other From Software game. Very hard to get, but very overpowered.
So if you're one of the only people who have the game, and you do want to speedrun it, we do have a Discord. We are slowly pulling resources together to help people out who want to pick it up. But it really is just me and ImJecht for the most part.
Yeah, I think a lot of people they know about it, but just briefly, and also the fact that you can only play it from just having an original Xbox is where you're really limiting your field. But it's a fun game, more fun casually probably than speedrunning, but it's a challenge.
If you have it, it's a great casual game.
Yeah, there's a lot of content, a lot of things packed in there for you to play.
Anyway, so that was Otogi. Probably the last you'll hear from me in the marathon. I'm gonna go take a nice long nap, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the runs. There are, I believe, at least a couple more left. And Series X will be out to play it. That's spicy.
And thanks for the invite, by the way, Ameiii. This was really fun. I come from the Kingsfield 2 community, or the Kingsfield in general. Lots of great speedruns there, which made from the same company From Software as Dark Souls and all the games that came before and after. Great games, highly recommend. I stream every day. I appreciate the invite. Unfortunately, sorry for the audio issues I had at the beginning.
You're welcome. Say hello to the dog for us. Give him a head pat.
Yeah.
Alright. See you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we are again set up right now for Ventifer's run of Ring Fit Adventure. This is going to be Beat Roll 10, Intensity 30. Just 1 second.